The microaggression is basically interactions between individuals where things are said or done that basically make the victim feel less than, makes them feel invalidated.
I think they're like comments that people make, whether they mean to be hurtful or don't mean to be hurtful, that kind of I think like people define them as racist, but I think they could just also be culturally insensitive towards specific minority groups.
Someone makes a remark and they may not have intended it to be a racist remark, but it can actually come across in that way. Or they might just say like, oh, it's just kind of a harmless joke, what's the big deal, get over it, right? Like we're just joking around kind of things.
Especially for Asian Americans, it's to be left with the feeling that they're always a perpetual foreigner, that they're not supposed to be here, I mean, I think what's kind of sad is like, when you read about like what a microaggression is and like they give you textbook examples, it's like I've experienced every single one of them. And I would also like, I don't think, it'd be that far-fetched in my imagination to think that all my Asian counterparts have experienced something similar too.
Like a classic one, I think, for Asians that we often experience is, a lot of times people will say like, hey, like, oh, where are you from? And, you say like, oh, I'm from Menlo Park. And then they say, oh, no, like, where are you really from?
As an Asian American, I've experienced like a lot more recently, especially with like COVID. There's a lot of, I guess, stereotypes or misconceptions that COVID's from just Asia and that Asians spread it and stuff like that.
So I remember when I was like in elementary school, they didn't have a lot of experience with me before. But the moment I started, asking questions about what I should be doing, whatever, she turned to me. She was an older white lady, but she turned to me. She said, your English is very good. And so, like in that moment, like when you're a kid, like when you're in elementary school, it's like, oh, thank you for the compliment. But obviously, that message, right, the sub message is like, oh, I don't expect people like you to be able to speak our language or English, that well.
Personally experienced any, but I certainly know people who have, and it's hurtful, it's frightening, it's very I think dehumanizing.
So I think back and like I definitely had the lunchbox moment where I would bring Chinese food from home. My mom would always pack things for me instead of letting me buy school food, and like I had lots of instances where kids are just like, ew, what are you eating, it smells gross and looks disgusting. So I had a lot of moments of that, and I think they were just experiencing curiosity. They'd never seen that in their own house.
You just get these all the time, and so it just kind of, after a while, it just gets really tiring. Like, yeah, a few of them would not be a big deal, but when you're just getting it all the time, it just becomes a little bit bothersome.
So like I'm thinking about the model minority myth about Asian Americans being like really good students, and I think when they say that, they might intend to bring out like a positive stereotype about Asians, but I think even those can be hurtful in unintended ways, because there are lots of people who aren't great at math, who aren't great students, and like it kind of dismisses who they are as people.
Game or something like that. And especially if it's math related, then it's like, oh, good. You get the Asian person on the team. Oh, good. You can do the math questions, right? Like just there's this stereotype of if you're an Asian, you're good at math, right? And so, but what if you're not, right? Like just because you're Asian doesn't mean you're going to be good at math. And so,
I remember like kids had this like sing song thing about Asian eyes and like how they were slanted. And I remember them singing that on the playground. And I don't even think it was like to me or any other Asian person in particular. It was just something that they said the way that you do like patty cake or other songs that kids sing.
I think just education and awareness and just raising visibility.
But I think that good leadership from the top down, whether it's the president of the United States sort of using a respectful tone towards immigrants, right down to heads of school, principals, teachers, anyone who's in a position of authority. If they can reinforce the idea of having empathy and respect for everybody, even people coming from different backgrounds, I think that will go a long way towards it. But I think it's also maybe a generational thing too. Unfortunately, I don't think that you can cure something like racism overnight.
More the younger generation gets older, it will help a lot.
And I think the ignorance is just not knowing people personally in your life, and who are Asian American or non-white, and the more segregated we have become, I think we like to think of ourselves as desegregated and heterogeneous, but I think the truth is, like, housing and schools and jobs are immensely segregated, and I think the more separate you are from other groups, the less chance that you have to interact with them and to understand them. It's just about, like, it's okay to say some things, but acknowledge that you shouldn't have said it, or like acknowledge that it was hurtful. And ask them where they're coming from. Then it'll help people understand, like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. I'll do better next time. And I think it's just more talking and education.
It's interesting. It's complex, but I think understanding some of that history is important, right? I think more people have to be comfortable talking about race, their own racial identities, racism in America. Because if not for these conversations, how else will people know?